Hey and howdy everyone, it's Jeannie with Paper Pixie Ink, and today I'm going to do a quick tutorial on how I created this little cardstock only half-inch thick folio. So it was pretty simple. It was just a little magnetized closure, and we have just a little folio flaps. I guess it's a Gatefold folio. And then we had the little pockets on the side and the waterfall feature. So let's go ahead and get started on that. We're going to start with I'm going to do this in craft because I'm going to use some of the paper from this Holiday Spice Recollections Hot Buy paper pad. I bought this one and two others from Michael's when they had them on, I think it was buy one, get two free. So it ends up being like $6.67, I think, for three for each pad. There's 48 pages, and they all have like little bits of like foil and whatnot on them. So, all right, let's get started. We are going to grab some pieces of, this is 110-pound cardstock, so it's thicker. And we're going to start by cutting one piece to 8.5 by 8.5. So it should already be 8.5, right? So it should be 8.5. Oh, it's a little wider than 8.5. Look at that. So we'll trim that to 8.5. And we'll trim this to 8.5. We're going to set this aside. So this becomes our back. And again, it's pretty solid. And then we are going to cut another piece to 5 3/4 by 8.5. So I guess we're going to have to do this for all of them. And then 5 3/4. And the reason we're cutting this to 5 3/4 is because we're going to score so that we have an inch to attach, and then a 1/2 inch for our spine, which is 1.5 inches. And we are making it 8.5. Half of that is 4 1/4, so that becomes our top flap. So we're going to score at 1. Turn around, and I'm going to do 1/2. And then we will fold those in a minute. So again, 8.5. And then 5 3/4. And then we're going to score at 1 inch and 1.5 inch. So those are our base pieces. So let's go ahead and put this other stuff away for the time being. We will need it again, but let's go ahead and get our base made. So I am just going to fold on my score lines, make sure that it's a nice even fold, and then I'm going to burnish it really well because this is essentially the spine, and we want to make sure that this opens and closes easily as well as, you know, stays open. So there's one side. And there's the second side. So let's go ahead and get these glued down. So I'm just going to use some 3/4 inch double-sided adhesive on this. All right, so we're just going to put a strip along here. I'm also going to use some liquid glue because I like to be very sure that these things are going to stick. And I'm just going to burnish them down. And peel one side off. I want to make sure that I get some liquid adhesive right along the edge of the seam. And then I'm just going to stick it on. Because this is square, we don't really have to worry about lining it up the right side because both sides are the same. And then I'm just going to burnish that down. Just got a little bit of glue there. So there's one side. And we're just going to go ahead and do exactly the same thing on the other side. Alright, so there is the base. So for the front cover of my original, I just used a cut apart and I put 4 magnets here underneath, you know, this, and then I put matching magnets here, 2 here and 2 here. So this just attaches. So we're going to go ahead and do that same thing on here. So I am going to pull out the collection. And as you can see, I've been using this for lots of other projects. And we have some of these cute little cut aparts. So we need to figure out what paper we want to use for our front cover, so that we can make sure that we choose one of these extra large cut aparts that will match nicely. Kind of like that. For that. And I'm going to go with this one, I think. Sure. So it's important to know what the size of your cut apart is going to be, because that is going to be what determines how and where you're going to place your magnets. So this is going to go on here like this. We want it kind of centered, obviously. And so we're going to have magnets here, 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 and here. So we're going to go ahead and back this, and I am going to back it in some of the craft cardstock, but I'm also going to put, I think, a layer of gold foil on it, just to give it a little bit more, you know, oomph. So let's grab some gold foil. These measure, this is 6 inches by 6 inches. So I'm going to grab my cutter, and I'm just going to do 6 1/8 of an inch and 6 1/8. Just so it has a thin border around all the sides. And then I'm going to take a piece of my craft cardstock, and I'm going to cut that to 6 1/4 by 6 1/4. So I'm actually going to put my magnets between the gold foil and my thick chipboard. So let's go ahead and glue this down. All right, so there we have that. So these are some really strong magnets. You have to slide them apart, you can't pull them apart. And again, I'm going to use 8 of these, just because I want to make sure, oops, that it holds really well. So I'm going to put them on the back of here. And this will just go on here. So we should be fine just putting them like that. Okay, so I'm going to take some more of this 3/4 inch and my dedicated snips for this. And I'm just going to cut off little square sections and push them down. I'm going to try and keep these relatively, equal to each other, but I'm just, see, I told you they were strong magnets. Uh-oh. I have lost a magnet. Or I didn't pull off enough to begin with, maybe. Oh, and I got a broken one. All right. So this will go on here, and this will go, whoops, on here. So we are going to glue this down, and then we're going to use these magnets on the back as guides to attach our others. So just gonna make sure this is on as well as I can get it, and then I'm gonna peel all 4 of these off. Oh no, did I lose another magnet? There it is. All right, so I am just going to apply some extra glue around these just because I want to make sure they stay stuck. And then I'm going to apply glue to the whole back of this and attach it to my cardstock. There we go. Oops. Some glue on there. Okay, so you can see it stays pretty flat, and now we are ready to move on to these magnets. So these are going to get attached to this, and in order to make sure that they're all in the right place, I am just gonna do this for all four. So I'm just cutting a piece of double-sided adhesive. I'm flipping it over so the sticky side is up. I'm going to take my magnet and I'm just going to let it fall onto it. I'm going to try and get them relatively centered, obviously. But this way you can use this as a guide to attach them to your cover without having to like measure or any of that fun stuff. Okay, whoops. There we go. So now that you have this, we are going to use it to attach to here. So I know that I want it to be relatively centered. I feel like that's pretty good. Once I feel like I have it, I'm just going to press down. Oh, I got one side. All right. So theoretically, this should be relatively centered. And it is crooked. It's straight. That feels straight. Alright, let's do this again. So the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and put down my pattern, cut and put down my pattern paper on the top, because we already know what we want to use. So we are going to cut that pattern paper to 8 1/4 by 4 inches. You could do 8 3/4 by 4 1/8, or 8 3/8 rather. But I just find it easier most of the time to do it by 1/4 inch segments. So I'm going to do 2, and then I'm going to cut these to 8 1/4. So these should now fit on here quite nicely. Just like that. And then that would attach. Alright, so let's go ahead and get these glued down. I'm going to open this up so that I can make sure that I get these pressed down really well on the magnets. So I'm going to do like I did before. I am going to pull the backing off the double-sided adhesive. I am going to add a little bit of extra glue around the magnets. And then I'm just going to add glue to the back of my pattern paper. And I'm going to glue that down, leaving about 1/8 of an inch on all sides. I'm just going to make sure that I press down really well around those magnets. So there's one. This paper is cool, it can go either way. So again, extra glue. And then lay it down. And press down around your magnets. So there is our front cover, nice and quick and easy. So let's go ahead and finish off our cover. So we'll need a piece for the back that is 8 1/4 by 8 1/4. So let's just see what we have in here. This kind of goes with, let's use that because that kind of goes with the cut apart that we used for the front. So again, we're going to cut this to 8 1/4 by 8 1/4. And I apologize, I'm trying a new method for doing my tutorials. I usually do voiceovers, so there might be some awkward silences. So 8 1/4 by 8 1/4. So that's going to go on our back. And let's just make sure I have this going the right way before I glue it on upside down. So let's go ahead and do that. Again, we're going to leave about 1/4 inch on all sides. There we go. I am just make sure I get it nice and flat. Only drawback to using liquid glue. Alright, so there we have it. So we just need 2 strips for here, and those are going to be 3/8 by 8 1/4. So I am just going to go into the scraps that I have and see what I could. I don't want to use those. I don't think I want to use those. Alright, well, that's fine. We can use so you could use some gold foil if you have that. You could use a couple strips from this or a couple strips from this. I'm going to go ahead and just use a couple of pieces of gold foil. So again, those, because our spines are 1/2 inch, you could do 1/4 inch, but those are going to be really thin strips. So I'm going to do 3/8 of an inch by 8 1/4 inch. So 3/8. And again, you need 2 3/8. And then I'm going to cut them to 8 1/4. I am going to glue those down as well. And I'm just going to add glue loosely because I don't want a lot of glue to like seep out the sides, which is a drawback to when you have smaller, thinner, I guess, pieces like this. There's one. And there is our second one. If I could get it straight, that'd be awesome. All right, so there is our front cover. We're not done yet, obviously. Let's move on to the inside. So on either side, on the inside, on the flaps, I did pockets. So to make the pockets, I did, they're 3.5 inches tall, and then obviously they're 4 1/4 inches wide. So I am gonna go and grab some of my leftover cardstock from before, and I am going to cut it to So I am going to cut this to, since it needs to be 4 1/4, I'm going to do 5 1/4, but I'm actually going to make it just a teensy bit smaller than 5 1/4. And then because the pocket is 3.5, we're going to make it 4. And then we are going to score at 1/2 inch on the 2 short sides and 1 of the long sides. Make sure you score it really well, but not enough that you're going to poke through, although with 110 pound, that's unlikely. So I'm going to go ahead and do that with another piece, so just shy of 5 3/4, and then 4. And I'm going to score not 5 3/4, 5 1/4. just shy of 5 1/4. I can math, really. So score 2 short sides and 1 long side. So we are going to cut our corners off because we want to get a nice flat pocket. So we're going to cut all 4 corners off, and then we're going to fold along the score lines and burnish them all down. Do a nice pocket. We're just going to do that with both. Okay. So before we go any further, let's pick out the paper that we're going to use for the inside back cover and our 2 flaps on the inside. So it would be 8 1/4. Not really sure how I could make that work. It might work. So I'm not really sure what I would use this paper for anyway. So on my original, I had left this open because I really like this paper, and I had done my waterfall up here. So I'm going to try and do the same thing, or something very similar, using this paper. So if I start from the top and I measure down, 8 1/2 or 8 1/4 is going to put this pretty much bottom. So let's do that. 8 1/4. And then if I need 8 1/4, that would leave 3 3/4, half of 3 3/4, 1 7/8, 1 7/8. So we are going to cut off 1 7/8 of an inch on either side. Around. Make sure it's flush. Whoops. Make sure it stays flush. So we're gonna do this, and then I will do my waterfall feature up here. So for my 2 side flaps, I think I might go with green. So, and all I'm going to do for that is I'm going to cut two pieces to 8 1/4 by 4 inches. And I'm just going to cut the piece that I would need for my pocket off the bottom of those. So let's get that done. So again, 2 pieces to 4 inches, 4 inches, and I'm kind of going to cut them to 8 1/4. So these pockets were 3 1/2. We're 3 1/2. So we're going to cut them, the paper, to 3 1/4 by 4. So 4 already, and we just need to cut 3 1/4. So we're going to do that for both because both of our pockets are the same. And we chose a paper that doesn't matter how we cut it, or what side we cut it, I guess. So that is what we should need. So I'm going to grab this folio again. And so we have one piece here. Remember, leaving about 1/8 of an inch on either side. We're going to have our pocket. And then we're going to have the piece to go on our pocket. So that's how those are going to come together. So let's go ahead and start gluing this stuff down. So I'm going to do this big piece first, just so I don't end up wrinkling it or ruining it in any way, because I have totally done that before. I really need to clean the nozzle on this glue. Okay, and remember, leave about 1/8 of an inch on all sides. And again, I'm just going to press it down. Sure I don't have any like glue bubbles or anything like that. And then I'm going to glue these pieces down first, and then I'm going to glue my pocket down over those. So I'm going to do both sides kind of at the same time. Again, about 1/8 of an inch. Make sure it's pressed down well. Well, I'm just going to apply glue on all my flaps, trying to get it to both edges, but not putting it on too thick that it will squish out. Because if it squishes out on the inside, then your pocket could glue to your cover, and then you wouldn't be able to use your pocket properly. So let's do this down into each corner. There we go. I'm just going to use my bone folder to push that down. And then I'm going to glue there's one side. down. You do want to make sure that these stick really well. There we go. So there's the base of it done. I'm going to cut another 2 strips of 3/8 of an inch by 8 1/4 inches. I'm just going to cut more of my gold foil, but you can use whatever scraps you want, or you know, depending on what collection you're using. One. So it's coming along. So now we just have to do the little waterfall feature that goes across here. Okay, so to make our waterfall, I'm going to use the stacked waterfall technique from Michelle Allen. I will link to her YouTube video on how to do this. I think it is inspiring how she came up with this, and it is a very useful way to create the waterfalls if you're not doing like the pull down type interactive type folio or waterfall. So to get started, I am going to take some cardstock and I am going to cut it. I'm going to leave it hopefully at 11 inches. It's a little longer. So we're going to cut that. And then I am going to cut these to 4 inches because that was the size of our other ones. So I need one that is 11 inches. And then I'm going to need I'm going to cut this to 4 as well. And then I'm going to need this to be 10 inches. And again, I'm going to trim this to 11. Do 2 more at 4. And then I'm going to need this to be 9. And then 8. And then I'm going to need, let's do going to need 4 inches and 7, because the last one we did was 8. And then we're going to need one that is 4 by 3.5. Definitely 4, right? So 3 and 3.5 by 4. That's done away, and I am going to grab this. I'm actually going to use this scoring tool bone folder because this is so thick. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to score this at 3.5, or 3 rather, so that you end up, once you fold it over, 4 by 3. And then all of these I'm going to score at 3 and turn it around, and 3. Same thing here, 3, turn it around, and 3 again. And we're just going to rinse and repeat this, 3, turn it around, 3, for all of the ones that we just cut. This is going to be a really thick waterfall because I am using 110-pound cardstock for it. So I'm going to put that to the side for now, but we are going to grab it back here in a minute, and I'm going to fold along all of my score lines and make sure that they're burnished really well. I'm just going to speed this part up when I'm editing so that you don't have to sit and watch me do this. So as you can see, this is kind of how it's going to come together. That's why it's called stacked. So she teaches you to use your scoreboard to keep everything aligned, and I think it's absolutely brilliant. So we're going to take our biggest piece, the one that's 11 inches long, and we're going to lay it flat here with the flaps coming up. And then we're going to take our next biggest piece and we're going to put glue on the middle part. And again, try not to use enough that it, squirts out, but enough that it's going to stay stuck, and you try and make sure that you get it to all edges. And then you're going to hold this one down, and you're going to take this and you're going to line it up at the half inch mark, and you're going to press it so that it's nice and flat. So these are all like perfectly aligned. Again, I think she's absolutely brilliant for thinking of this. And then we're going to take the next smaller piece, and we're just going to rinse and repeat this process for all of our pieces. So apply glue to the middle piece. And then make sure it's nice and flat and aligned, and then press it down. And then the next one. So not only does this result in a really nice, even waterfall, which I've always struggled with when doing a manual one like this, I also find that it is way faster to put one of these together than it is for the other ones. It's less pieces to worry about. And because it's so much easier to line everything up, it's just that much faster to put together. Again, this is going to be a very thick waterfall because I used super heavyweight cardstock for this. So for this last one with the flat folded down like that, I'm going to put it at the 5.5 inch mark. I'm just going to make sure that it's nice and aligned and doesn't interfere with the other flap. There's our waterfall. I'm just going to burnish because I want to make sure that this lies as flat as possible, which again, kind of difficult when it's that thick already. Okay, so the next thing that I want to do is create a little band, because this will go across like this. So I want a little band that goes here. Now last time I used a little chipboard piece, which I don't have, so I'll have to find some kind of cut apart or something to use. But for now, let's create a little band that will create our closure so that that stays closed. So I have this piece. Obviously we don't want it, well, maybe we do want it to be that thick. I'm gonna cut apart. What do I have for this collection? Takes those little words. Well, let's just make this super, we'll leave this thick like this, or wide like this, and we'll kind of put it to here, and we're going to put some magnets on the inside of this so that we can keep it held closed, because it's gonna take a bit, because there's a lot to this one. And we'll just leave it plain, and maybe I'll use a corner chomper of some sort to make that more decorative. So I'm going to put this aside for now. If we're going to do this, I'd say that's about an inch. So let's go ahead and score, actually let's score 1¼ inches. So this will just go on like this. So I'm actually gonna measure this one. I am going to find the center. And I'm just gonna mark it in a few places. And then this is going to attach to here. So I'm also gonna find the center of this. So a little odd, but okay. So there's my rough center. I'm gonna put glue on the inside part of that small flap that we created. And then I'm going to line up the center of this with the center of this. I should have gone up a little bit further, but that's okay. You want to make sure that your score line is on the outside of your card or of your waterfall, because you need it to be able to fold over properly still. So there is our waterfall. I am going to do something with this. We think scalloped, probably scalloped. Scalloped would be good, probably. You don't have to do this. I just wanted to make it look a little bit more decorative. All right, so now let's go ahead and attach some magnets. Sure how many sets that I should use. Well, you definitely need one here. And I am going to use some of my somewhat rather strong magnets for this one. So I'm just going to follow the same process that I did before. I'm going to take some of my 3/4 inch double-sided adhesive. I'm going to cut a little square or rectangle or whatever off. I'm going to start on this so that I can make sure that up just a smidgen, because I don't want it to be too close to the edge here. And then we're going to get another piece off, and we're just going to do the same process. So I'm going to make sure that I have this nice and flat before I press this down. So, as you can see, it doesn't really hold it super well. So we are going to put in some additional magnets. I'll do one here. sure how well this is going to work. So you can see I'm just using these as a guide. And I'm aiming for, see how it's falling a little bit better now? And it'll be better still once we glue it down. Another one here, and that should be hopefully good. So once this is glued down, it should stay pretty closed. I mean, to the best it can, because it's already so thick. So the next thing that we need to do is cut our cardstock for this. So when I did this last time, I cut photo mats for each one of these. I think I'm just going to leave them this time around and just put pattern paper on here. And I think I'm going to use the pattern paper, the leftover pattern paper from this, for that top one. And so this is 3 inches by 4 inches. So I'm just going to take one of my smaller pieces that I have left over, and I'm going to cut it to so 3 1/4 by 2 1/4. And so that will be on like that. And then I need pieces for this. So this is two and is that like 9/16? I'm not sure how I got that size. And this is 7 1/4 almost. So what paper do I want to use for this? Do I want to use more of this? That seems a little busy. Do I want to use some of this? It still seems super busy. I don't like that. So I think I will use gold foil for that. And then for this, I think I will use some more of this. So we said it was 7 1/4-ish. So that means it needs to be 7 inches. And then did we say 2 and 9/16? It's a really weird measurement. And a little bit better than 2 1/2. So we have 2 1/2. We are going to reduce it and then make it a little bit wider to accommodate. So 7. And I always use all of my little scraps like this, especially for my like more specialty paper, like my foils and my glitters, because you never know when you might want to cut a small word out, or you might need to back a small, sentiment, or you might want to cut anything really. So it may seem silly, but I hold on to all of them. Again, I'm going to make that the same size as that. We're almost done, guys. So this is going to go on here. So I'm just going to go ahead and pull that off. I'm going to make sure that I have extra glue around that. And then I will apply glue to the back of my pattern paper. And glue it down, leaving about 1/8 of an inch on all sides. And again, making sure that I press down really well around that magnet. So that goes like that. And then this is going to go on here, but in order to do that, I need to cut my scallops. So I'm going to, so this will go on like this. I'm just going to remove the backing of all of my little magnets. Make sure I have some extra glue. And then I'm going to add glue to the back of my pattern paper that I cut. And then I'm going to press it down. And this one's really important that you make sure that you press down really well around all of your magnets. You want to make sure that that's really, really good and stuck. It goes like that. And then we have this. So you need to do one side scallops. Apparently I need to sharpen that. And then we're just going to glue this down, and I would advise being very careful when you are doing glue on foil cardstock, because it is really easy for that glue to show through. Quite often I end up having to put another layer over top because I didn't do the glue well enough and it showed. There we have our waterfall. Now I might go back later and just take strips of the pattern paper that I have left and just add strips to this, because you're going to be putting photos on here anyway. But I'm not sure yet. So I'm just going to go ahead and glue this down. So what we're going to do is we are going to add glue all the way around, but we are going to make sure that we get a good adhesion around this, because we definitely don't want that to get pulled off. Alright, so to glue this down, we're just going to eyeball it, try and do it mostly centered-ish. trying to keep everything as straight as you possibly can. I'm just going to press it down, and then I'm going to open it up, and I'm just going to start really pressing it down in between. So that's it. I'm not going to show you how to make the little inserts because I've done them in lots of other videos, and everybody has different types of inserts that they like. Some people like to do extra just basic photo mats, some people like to do little booklets or bookmarks or what have you. So I'm just going to leave it blank for now, but there you have the little cardstock only folio, Gatefold folio. So pretty simple and straightforward. Just depends on, you know, how much level of detail you want for some of it, but it comes together pretty easily. So as always, if you're interested in seeing more, guys, please don't forget to click on that subscribe button, and thanks for watching.